Live?
Hello. Okay, it's
Hello,
live.
we're back.
Uh-huh. uh I like
uh,
your back to the lab shirt. Like
why? Thank you.
it's
I
really
thought it was
it's
fitting.
topical. Are
uh,
you are indeed in the lab, it looks like.
I am. I
hmm
am. I was not able to rush home in time for this, but I think lab. I feel like it's a good.
I'm
It's a fitting place to do the stream again.
yes, I'm also
We
in the
did the
lab.
stream a lot in the
Um,
lab
uh-huh.
throughout grad school, so let's bring it back. Okay, for those of you who are new here, my name is Ruby.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're philosophizing. Sorry we left and we took a huge break because we transitioned, or at least half of us transitioned into postdocs and moved cities. And then we were like in the same city and we were like, let's hang out IRL. And we neglected the stream. And we thought this is a good time to bring it back. And our side quest of talking to the internet and doing science communication was important enough to come back to the interwebs and say hi to all you again and help work on our morale because the morale in academia is pretty much in the gutter right now. And we wanted to do some things that made us happy. And this is one of the things that got us through COVID. So we're like, let's do that thing again. Um, anyway, this also gives us the opportunity to shift the focus back to really heavily philosophizing, like part of philosophizing, which is talk about like hypotheticals and just like think about our roles in society and talk to all the internet and hopefully be your friendly neighborhood scientists that you guys can talk to
Yeah.
and chat to. So feel free to drop things in the chat. We are going to try our hardest to like look at the chat out of the corner of our eye and address questions and thoughts that you guys have. Hello, please cheer us up, says
Oh yeah.
Rabai. Yes,
Um
we will try really hard to
yeah,
cheer you
like
up.
honestly, I'm not sure if we can promise that on this stream because we're talking about like science funding, but
Yeah, we thought it was
um,
so basically we went to a science march last week and we are like we should bring the stream back. And the topic of the rally we went to was called Standing Up for Science. And I thought it was like yeah, I thought it was a pretty big deal in the science community. It was like nationwide and everything. And then like I was texting one of my friends and they're like, "Oh, you guys were at a march?" And I was like, "You didn't hear about it?" And they're like, "Nope, we didn't know about it." And I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe we need to like keep this momentum going and tell you exactly why we're marching and why we thought it was important to like take an evening off of our Thursday, like immediately after lab, and to tell the internet about why we marched and
does this
why it
does
was
this
important."
count as after lab, given that we're both still in the lab?
we, we we put all our animals away. We are
That's
no
true.
longer doing any active science
True.
physically in the
Okay,
lab.
fair.
I
We
think we count it. Yeah, it's
okay.
extracurricular time, but it's really so I feel like this is one of those careers where the line between like work and home is pretty blurry. This is like a day another conversation for a different day. But I feel like I sit at home, I'm in my hammock, I'm thinking about science. Like, is that working? And vice versa, right?
Mhm.
Aw, we missed you too. Hi, Dutterbutter.
Yeah. Aw.
Aw, it's nice to see you back. Anyway, today's topic was why we marched, and the I guess like the big question is like, is science only economically viable if it's federally funded? Like, is there ways to do it without it? What does it look like outside of the states? Like, can it be done? Or are there examples where it can be done? Like, is there a place for it? Like, what are the scales, pros, cons? And let's discuss it. And also, let's hear like what y'all think we're doing, and then we were going to try and like suss out like what are the actual wastes or like possible wastes that are happening in science, like this alleged waste that is happening in money. And we're like,
Mhm.
well, sometimes we do see waste too. Like, here's an example, and we'll give you some examples we think are possible wastes in science. And like, we'll see how you guys feel about that, and and maybe we'll delve into it more deeply in future streams. And then finally, we wanted to end it with like leaving money on the table, like exactly like what like who's benefiting from the science, and if investing science is so good economically, why aren't more private companies, like why isn't everyone on board, like this should be mission, like this should be a this shouldn't be a partisan problem. This should be like a thing everyone is pro. Like, why isn't it happening? So
And we'll
those are the
also talk about some of the good things that are happening.
yes, and then we'll end with historical good things that science has done for us, and how some of our taxpayer dollars has helped us. Because a lot of us forget, like we take things for granted. Like I just drink water out of the tap, and I don't have to worry about getting cholera. Like that's genuinely a thing. Like in this country, I will just not boil the water,
Also,
nothing.
yeah, we're like most of the way to making nuclear fusion, which like has mostly been invented at government labs. But yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh yeah, Ruby with the massive digs upgrade. um, yeah, I
Thank you.
thought that
Isn't
was
my office an upgrade from grad school office?
yeah, that's true. Yeah, on a
And
sweet
my
postdoc
sweet
salary.
sweet postdoc salary. Yeah, like would the internet be like shocked at how much we make or how little we make? We were happy to share. It's
Mhm.
not it's common knowledge. You can find it on the internet exactly how much we make. Then you should see how much like the median income is in the city we live in, and we're well below. We're well below. Like I think most of us qualify for the housing, the extra housing budget that the
Mhm.
entire city gives us. Because we make so little money, we're actually considered quite poor. Anyway, that's off topic.
Yeah, but yeah,
Today's topic
I
is
thought this was so that I thought this was an interesting thing to revive. You said it's like, oh yeah, I've seen so many political fundraising emails, and not many of them mentioned it. Mentioned the Stand Up for Science thing, and yeah, I agree. I think it's and interestingly, like I saw actually when scientists were talking about this, one of the interesting things was someone was commenting on these. There's a sign that's called like "Girls Just Want to Have Funding," and they were saying like, maybe that's not the best like message because like everyone wants to have money, but we should really be emphasizing like why is this important for society in general. And I kind of agree with that. I think you have to do there's points to both, I think. But one of the things it is a problem. I think is like it's weird that it isn't really a mainstream thing. And I think one of the things that we wanted to do in this stream is really get into so kind of what's been happening, of course, is like a lot of these programs are getting cut. And actually, in one case, for example, there's NIH grants being cut, there's federal research staff being cut. And in one case, for example, this memo went out and they specifically said, we are firing these people because they'll be more productive in the private industry. And so, one of the things that I wanted to kind of think about in this stream is that true? And why, if that's true, has much of this research been funded by the government? Maybe are there ways where this really would work if these people go into private industry or something else? Um,
I think existentially it's also a question because I'm like,
yeah.
wait, if I have to leave academia, like if there's no jobs for me in academia after this postdoc, like what am I going to do in industry or wherever else that I could be more productive according to the more efficiency market thing? It's like, what are the options? Like, where could I go? Where would I be most useful and like most helpful for society as a
Mhm.
human being with my set of skills that I've been training for oh shit, how long have I been in school? A really long time. I think I did 21 years of school. I was in 22nd grade, I think.
22nd grade.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I was in the 22nd grade before I defended. So that means I was into school for 26 23 years. It's wild. I like trained my whole career for this. Like, where do you want me now? Like put me in
Yeah.
coach. And so we're like, wait, okay, is there a private sector for it? And because there currently isn't. And like, could we make it? Like if a good group of us had a mass exodus in the next like year, like
Mhm.
what would we make it? Like what would it look like?
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought that was a like a nice
Yeah, it's a
like
really interesting question. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. I personally get a little bit annoyed when I see people who are like postdocs being like, I don't have any skills in private industry because like, I mean, you clearly do. I mean, like people who have worked in research can like, honestly, if you can thrive in an academic research lab, you can thrive anywhere.
yeah,
Like, you have like the adaptability to do that.
yeah.
But there's also this like institution like institutionally, how do we make it work? And so I think that was one of the things actually that I wanted to kind of start out talking about, which was um, so there's this idea, like, so Musk is saying these people should go into private industry. It really begs the question of kind of like, okay, so why has so much research been done by the government? Like, why have we not done this before? And so I was reading some papers by the National Bureau of Economic Research and also by interestingly, the American Enterprise Institute, which is very conservative leaning. Um, and even they actually had this article that came out really in support of government research, which was interesting. And one of the things that they point out, and that all these folks point out, um, is that so first of all, investing in research is like an insanely good investment. One of the statistics that was given is that since the end of World War II, about a fourth of all the economic growth in the US has been directly attributable to government um, investment in research, which is an enormous amount of money. And we pretty consistently, like, everyone who does a study finds that, like, when you invest money in research, you get somewhere between like a 200% and 500% return on investment. So that, I mean, so it's really interesting because it seems like on one hand, like, you would have to be extremely stupid as an investor to not be investing in R&D. On the other hand, people, I mean, they do a bit, but not necessarily at the scale that the government does. And there's a few reasons that have kind of been put out for that. The biggest one that economists talk about is the time scale. So really basic research, the Congressional Budget Office and also the Federal Banking System did some studies, and they find that it takes usually about 10 to 50 years to see this impact on the economy from it. And that, honestly, I think it's very hard to justify in a private equity funded company, like why you should wait that long, even if it is a really big investment or a really good investment. Another thing is risk. So when people invest in research, they're not investing like in research in general, they're investing in a specific project. And especially for basic research, just like there's a high chance that you don't get anything profitable out of that. A big part of that is also because it's really hard to patent basic discoveries. And so it's very hard if you're investing in basic research to make sure it's actually going to that investment is going to benefit you and not someone else.
I was gonna say a lot of basic research just gets published and theoretically it's just free to read. It's like the point of it is to disseminate it as broadly and as fast as possible. So like we literally make discoveries and we put it on the internet. And I was like, here, read this paper. We worked really hard and we think it's this.
And I think there's fundamentally kind of a philosophical conflict there, because to do good basic research, you want to document everything and make it public so that other people can confirm the thing. And that's kind of the sort of the opposite of what most of the current models for IP want to do, actually, especially for stuff that can't be patented. So actually the point of our patent system is to encourage people to do that, to actually make things public instead of them being trade secrets so other people can verify them. But for these basic research things like just, oh, we're looking for this enzyme in bacteria, or we're trying to measure how fast the universe is expanding, it's very hard to get any sort of intellectual property out of it. And actually, the final reason that economists mention is actually just that people are stupid. Like they
I'm sorry, our comments are Dutter Butter says enough about Ruby's new gigs. Is Nathan in a Star Wars lab?
I'm in sort of. I am in the media lab. I'm next to a lab called Nano Cybernetic Biotrek. So kind of. But yeah, we so it's tangentially relevant, but for some reason the media lab likes to spend a lot of money on chairs, which like explains this. But anyway, but what I was saying is that kind of the final thing that they mention is that um, companies that are crunched for cash whenever there's an economic downturn, they tend to cut their spending on research and development in ways that are actually pretty economically irrational. So it seems like when people say that they see that they are losing money or their stock price is going down, they just kind of behave kind of stupidly. And a big part of that tends to be cutting these long running research projects. So this is just really what you need for, especially for really basic fundamental research. So all of those, I think, are reasons why it's challenging to do this kind of research without government support.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the beauty of the government support we got in science in this country, in the U.S. If you're here listening in, is that it was quite stable. Like, I mean, it wasn't increasing, but like I don't think the budget has really increased like percentage wise since like the early 2000s, but it was there, and like there was a system where if you know what, you jumped through all the hoops, you wrote a nice grant, you like took it through all the hoops of like review with the study sections, and then they finally were like gave you a score and it's a reasonable score and you got the grant. You kind of like just depended on gonna get that money for the next 3 years, and then you're like, okay, now I can do these like kind of crazy projects, shoot for the stars, trying to make new discoveries, and then you just kind of go on that treadmill. It's kind of wild that you could go through that all the hoops of getting everything, and they're like, here you go, you're going to get your money next year, and then we'll renew you every year until your grant is over in like 3 or 5 years, and then suddenly be like, oh no, psych, never mind, you're not getting all of it, you're going to get a percentage of that. Oh, and then psych, actually we're not renewing you, we're going to get you, you know. It's really scary to be like, wait, I just generated, you know, a mouse line that requires 2 years to like breed, and like, and I built a rig that took a year to build, and like I planned the thing, and it, you do what I mean? Like you just like cut it,
Mhm.
you cut the legs out from under like a lot of scientists, and that's really scary because people had made plans.
So you're saying like the ability to kind of, you think the government kind of has a unique ability in theory to kind of give you stable funding.
Yeah, kind of stable funding, and like I
Hmm.
remember I was going to a seminar or like PIs giving advice to young investigators, and they literally were like, this is how you plan to run a group. You need to like get multiple grants, and you need to have them overlay like this so that you're never in the like a funding hole, and there's like all this whole thing, and it's a really stressful and hard job already on top of doing the actual science. And then now you're telling me even if you did get the grant, suddenly it might just like go poof on you. Wild. That's insane. And we can go into like how hard it is to get in a grant in a future episode, because we're gonna try and concentrate on exactly what the government is doing, or in versions of how um we can fund science without the government, which is kind of what we
Hmm.
wanted to talk about today.
Yeah.
Um
Oh, Rebecca. Oh, you're gonna say something. Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to talk about potential like I guess like wins in where the government was not involved at all and people
Hmm.
got together. And I think it's like kind of slightly positive. There's some like not so positive signs we can discuss, but one of the ones that are kind of like heartwarming is I was like sat in a talk a couple weeks ago, and they talked about taking an ASO. This is like a drug that is like directly, it's basically injected into people's um like CSF, and it like targets like genes in that specific patient. And basically it went from we discovered this mutation in this human patients, and like fix this or we didn't fix, they fixed them partially, but the drug was in the human person within a year, and it was completely funded, or the majority of it was funded like privately. And I was like, whoa, how'd that happen? And they literally walked through like how the people found the scientists to do it, and it was like families on Facebook, and they're like super rare disease Facebook moms like Facebooking each other and be like, hey, I know about this, I know about this, you know about this, professor, and they're like reading the papers to find the PIs, and they were like, we're gonna find the funding. And they privately found some rich friends and lots of internet moms. They banded together and they funded like multi-million dollar project to like help this child get this drug. It's wild. I was like,
And
whoa.
so were these people just contributing money like out of their goodness of their heart, or did they have family members with the disease,
They
or?
have family members with completely different diseases. They were just
Mhm.
like,
Oh
we
wow,
feel bad for
yeah.
your kid because your kid has a horrible
Uh-huh.
disease. We're gonna donate to your kid's horrible disease. But like that was like a therapy which works for that one child and only that one child, because they're like such a rare mutation. It only happens one for that person. So
Mhm.
it literally had to be like bespoke. It was like bespoke medicine for this one child, millions of dollars. And like they rushed it through all the FDA clearances. They did all of the like hoops just for this one kid, and it all happened with like I want to say, because like the buildings and stuff were NIH funded and
Mhm.
government funded, but like the actual like take it through like safety and stuff like that was funded privately, and that was kind of cool. And I was like, oh hey, is there a deeper pocket for that, or is that the entire reach that the internet can take? It
Mhm.
was that the miracle? The miracle was just having like all the moms and parents finding each other and like funding this one child's thing. That was a miracle. Or can that be like a stable ongoing thing? Like can there be foundations that just fund these kind of like moonshot projects? Because that's a very wild, not wild, it's a very adventurous move, right? Like we
Mhm.
think about a stable science or stable funding allowing us to do kind of not just bread and butter science, but also like our moonshots. Like
Mhm.
this was a moonshot, like, and they did it in a year. The typical drug to like from bench to bedside is like 10 plus years. Just
Yeah.
for context, like the fact that this ASO went from like we found the mutation and like something was injected into a child in 1 year is the most wild, like hopeful thing I've heard in a while. And I was just like, wow, it can be done. What?
Yeah. Oh
uh
yeah, Ribeye B was saying like, okay, is this because it's a rare disease? They got like, did they get some shortcuts for the regulation?
Oh yeah, because basically everyone's it was a Hail Mary because it was like
Mhm.
super debilitating. Like they were basically going to guarantee the child was going to die. Um, so they were like throw the kitchen sink at it. But still like cool. Like
Uh-huh. Yeah, it
I
is
was so
really
hopeful.
cool.
Like I was
Yeah.
sat there and I was just like, whoa, like the government doesn't move quickly usually.
Mhm.
And like this could, like this did that, right? Like it patched a gap that didn't exist. And I was just like, okay, like I'm down for something like this. Like I could see like this could be a model, right? Like I can see, and then I was sat there. So I was really excited. I went to this talk and I was just like, oh my god, so cool, so cool. And then I went back to the lab and I was just like, who has $8 million? Like how much, like where am I going to find $8 million for the next child? Like who's going to fund the next child with the super rare disease? Because there's a lot of them out there. And like who's going to pick which child and which disease and which, do you know what I mean? Like then it
Mhm.
was like a whole ethics problem. And I was just like, oh, this is a philosophizing question.
This is yeah. And it's I mean kind of similar to Ribeye B, like I think it's cool. I do wonder like, okay,
Mhm.
how does it work for scientific problems that are less dramatic? Because like, I mean, yes, that is really cool. I feel like you're not gonna get the same thing for kind of like someone who wants to understand like under what conditions silica forms into amorphous versus crystalline structure. Like
Absolutely. You're absolutely
uh
correct. The non-translational directly to disease kind of science. Like
mhm,
I think that's one of the things that we're not amazing at. We're really good at talking about our own really specific thing, but it's really hard for us to make like like the ripple effect. Like
mhm,
we're hesitant to make too many like connections all the way that far because it's not
mhm.
it's a correlation. Um and that's a disservice to science communication. Like we don't talk about how understanding the crystalline structure
Yeah.
of whatever you were talking about earlier can like affect, I don't know, food, like
Right.
how your ice
Uh-huh.
cream is being made. like
Uh-huh.
like we don't make that connection day to day.
Right. We don't mentally.
make that leap. And I think those are exercises that we should be doing and we can do on
Mhm.
the stream, and we will do the homework to like, discover figure out the emulsification like ratios that work best for different kinds of ice creams. I
And I think this is interesting. It really comes back to like I think two of the more interesting reasons why we have traditionally relied a lot on the government to fund science. And like one is that like a lot of these things are hard to patent, but they do clearly have a lot of economic and human benefits. Like kind of like one fourth of all our economic development from since World War II is attributable to all this. And so if you have an organization that is kind of attributable to or accountable to everyone, kind of or I guess I would say like you need an organization that is kind of capturing the value that is spreading out through society, because that's the other thing that these economists all talk about is they say when you invest in research, the benefits accrue about 50% to like a corporation that you give a grant to, and the other 50% are just kind of spread out through society at large. And
yeah.
so to really be profitable to like support something, you need an organization that is kind of accountable to all of society.
Yeah, and like
Um,
really big and like crosses
yeah.
like state lines.
Hmm.
I think a really good example of where it's I think it's really important is like meteorology, like
Uh-huh.
like weather. Like
Uh-huh.
the storm is doesn't care like where your border between states are. Like the storm's gonna roll from like one state to the next state, and like you know what I mean, like rain, storms, water, fire, like that kind of stuff. Like you kind of want a federal version keeping track of that stuff.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
want scientists that are like, not just living in one particular state, keeping track of all the weather.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Because, like, what if like one state gets really good, fire control or rain or whatever, and then like the state next door has like no one watching it.
And there's a tornado in the state next door, and
Yeah, like you
yeah.
really want something like or another example I think would be like GPS. Like imagine if well actually you don't have to imagine. So like in every summer I pay for satellite access for my tracker when I go camping in the woods and have no signal. I pay a subscription for that. It's like 12.99 a month or something. But imagine if like we just pulled out our phones and like pulled out Google Maps and had to pay 12.99 a month just to get your GPS location so you can like drive to the next location. Like it makes sense that certain things should be government funded.
Right.
Like it's just like a stable, like you don't want, the transition between one model and another to not have like a nice smooth. You want a smooth transition between things like longevity in the weather, the people that keep track of your weather and and satellites and things that could come out of the sky and hit you.
Uh-huh.
um
Department of things that can
Science
come out of
Simmons
the sky
says
to hit
I
you.
would just embrace arriving late to everything. Yes, time. Also, like, the the people that are, how like there was daylight savings fairly recently, like last weekend. I
Mhm.
didn't even realize it until like I woke up an hour later, but my phone's because I don't use analog clocks on the walls anymore. Like my phone automatically shifted the hours, like things like that you don't think about, but daily, like someone's in charge of that. That's someone in the government. PD
Mhm.
does.
And
Um,
yeah, I think when you were talking about the weather, you were talking about, I think that was touching on kind of the final thing that like the economists also mentioned. So kind of science funders for it, like to make economic sense for someone to fund basic science, kind of they really need to be collecting value from like the whole country or the whole world, and that's like what they need to be accountable for it to make economic sense for them to invest in this basic research. The other part of it that a lot of economists mention is that it's really hard to do basic research if you don't have an economy of scale, which means that kind of you have processes and facilities that are just set up and always there. So it's much harder to efficiently do research if your research is being done mostly by startups that have like a lifespan of a couple of years, because you need to hire people. You can't really hire half a person. You can't really do like anything useful with like half a genomics facility. Like so you get a lot more efficient research if you have these big organizations like universities and the HHMI and NIH intramural research that are established and like work really well. And similarly with weather, like we need to blanket the entire country in radar and weather balloons, and you get kind of this kind of much more bang for your buck than in the ability to develop models of the weather.
Yeah, I was tasked with finding examples where something independent of the government was capable of doing a large scale project. And so in neuroscience, there's this institute called the Allen Institute, and they really concentrate on like mapping everything. And they're like mapping the brain, like they're doing single cell sequencing of the entire mouse brain, like 44 animals, like every single cell, every location. And it's becomes so like previous to their rise in prominence in science, there was like maps there was like different anatomical maps lying around, but I feel like we're all kind of all going towards the Allen style now because it's so prominent. Every scientist everywhere, every neuroscientist or anyone that works with a rodent kind of has opened one of these maps before and was like flip through it, use some of the tools, and it was like open and free, like, and it's not funded directly with NIH grants. I think I'm fairly confident it's mostly funded through a foundation, and someone just convinced a Microsoft like a member of Microsoft to be like, hey, we would like to do this really important thing for neuroscience, and please put all your money into it. And I promise you, it's going to be really helpful. And it has been immensely helpful to the community. And it wasn't, government funded. It was sometimes it works. Um,
So it sounds like this alternate model is kind of like we've just find rich people and convince them that it's important.
Yeah. I think my university does that too. Like currently, like we have like alumni weekends or like even like alumni events where we bring back alumni to this university, and then like we just like squeeze them. And then and they no, and they literally will go pick postdocs and be like, I like that postdoc. They're doing cool work. I want to fund them. And then they get a named fellow, like, and then they get to
Uh-huh.
have like lunch with them once a year. And like that's a thing. Um that kind of is happening. It works at fancy universities. I don't know if
Mhm.
I don't know if there's enough rich people that have enough of like that philanthropic like need to like give back. I don't know if there's enough of them, and I don't know if they're spreading it evenly and in a way that's most um like beneficial for science in general, right? Like I'm in a great place because like people know who we are, like I'm in a cool university, like,
Mhm.
but that's not
Right.
true about like, you know what I mean? Like no one's funding, a named fellow in like the University of Middle of Nowhere.
Yeah,
And
like everyone wants to like have a building at MIT, but that's like not
yeah,
necessarily true.
and well, in this
Yeah.
case, it'll be a
Uh,
fellow at MIT.
yeah.
Like
Yeah, I
that's
think
a cool
there's a
thing
lot
to
of
fund.
discussion in the chat about this. Like EV Neuro is saying like, oh, it's really scary to think about relying on private orgs for funding. Um, Revive BU is saying like there's this bio conference. I was curious, what's a CZI grant?
That is a good question. Googling CZI.
Hmm.
CZ. Oh, Chan Zuckerberg.
Oh,
Is that
yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, Chan Zuckerberg initiative. Yeah, like a Facebook-ish adjacent grant. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
I will say I am also like entirely privately funded right now, and it is stressful. I think I think a lot of it comes back to like the stability problem, like you were talking about, is kind of you don't really have much confidence that like these private funders always understand like, okay, you really need this stability to do the research.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
one of the things, like it's scary to try and do research when you're thinking about, where you're going to get your next meal and pay next month's rent. Like you need to be kind of in a safe space. Like that's why I'm like science is always a privilege. It's a privilege to do science because like I don't have to worry about, for now, I don't have to worry about where rent's coming from. I don't, like, there's food, they're feeding us. like I'm okay. So spend your time thinking and using it to, make discoveries. Like the goal. But if the moment we start being like, am I gonna get deported? Am I gonna, do you know what I mean? Like if I don't get this paper published, I might lose my job. Like if I don't get grants, I might lose my job. I might have to fire people because like I didn't get a grant. I have to like shrink my lab. Like that's really scary, right? Like then you spend more of your mental energy thinking about that instead of like creative ways to solve a problem or do
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like the things
Yeah.
that we actually would like to do and like, you know, trained to do.
Yep. Yeah, like there's a lot of research on this that people who are anxious and threatened actually they have much narrower attentional focus, they're less creative. Like it's not good for science. Like um
Yeah. Oh, we wanted to switch before we ran out of time. We should get into topic 3, which is like
uh-huh.
where's the waste? Because I feel like
Yes.
that's like a important topic. That we
Uh-huh.
talk because you know that's one of the administration's like energies is like, you know, reduce the waste. Where's the waste coming from? And sometimes I'm like, wow, they're feeding us a lot. They really, you know, in this building. Why are they feeding us so much? And I was just like, well, actually, if you look at a private company and a lot of startup companies, they feed a lot of their workers as well too. They have like free lunch or free dinners. And I'm like, you know, those actually aren't free lunch and free dinners. Those are please work extra hours for us. Like please stay in lab till later hours, like without telling you, hey, stay later. They're just giving you an option. Hey, it's like, hey, you want to like just eat here and then you can like finish up whatever you're working on a little bit longer, a couple extra hours here and there, so you don't have to rush home and cook dinner. That's what that actually is. Like sometimes I'm like, oh wow, it's you know, here's some waste. But another waste I think is kind of spicy and we can get into it deeper is I think it's actually the publishing situation. And this came up because an article which we will drop in the link in a bit. Currently, there's a lawsuit that a bunch of scientists put up against the major publishing companies in science. Because it's basically an oligopoly and they're gouging us from both ends. So, for those of you that are not in academic publishing, the way it works is that we go, taxpayers spend money, we write grants, they give us grants. We use some of this grant money to pay the publishing companies to publish the papers that we want to. Um, like we make a discovery and want to write it up. So when we like write up the paper and it like goes through review and stuff, like we pay them like thousands of dollars. Like every paper is about a couple $1,000s. And then when we want to read papers, also taxpayer dollars that we got grants for and the university gets overcharged for, goes to the library department in our university, and the library department forks up a bunch of money back to these also publishing companies so that we can have access through the paywall so we can read the papers that we published, or our peers published. So then like that's like a whole thing where they're getting money from taxpayers like two ways. And that seems kind of silly because we all we're just doing all the work. Like we peer review each other because we think that's a really important part of science. And I we definitely should be doing that for free. Currently most of it is free. Sometimes you get a credit and be like, hey, next time you get 20% off, you know, a couple $1,000s when you publish with us again. You can get like a little waiver. Otherwise we basically do it for free, for each other, and it's part of science and it takes hours of our lives because you have to like read the paper carefully and read, like, look at figures and stuff, write reviews. I think there's a lot of stuff happening in the chat and I'm completely missing it. Thanks for bringing it up. Yes, publishing. So anyway, that's kind of the system that's currently here, and somehow they've like hoodwinked all scientists and like all universities be like, this is the way. Like pay us to read it, pay us to publish it, and then keep it on our servers. So yeah, hopefully that will get changed soon. But yeah, if you want to target a major waste in thousands of dollars, that could be like lab equipment or like another grad student or publishing. Huge waste. And it's like not an amorphous target. Like these are actual journals. Like there are journals that I have published in that my current university does not pay for. So I have to like request through interlibrary loan to read own paper that I wrote. Like I have like I wrote this paper and like I can't like share it with my friend. And I'm like, wait, hold on. I have a PDF somewhere on like a flash drive, but it's not like the distributed version. That version is behind a paywall. Like,
And it's
that's
like you
wild.
technically, yeah, you're like it's mine.
Yeah, it's mine. And like the government has made some efforts, right? So like sometimes, not sometimes, a couple years ago, they were like every paper that if you are NIH funded, government funded, the papers you publish must be what's it called? Like open, like
Open access,
open
yeah.
access, which actually means guess who has to pay for it? We have to pay more for open access. So like paying for a paywall is like this price, paying for open access is like this price. So it takes more money out of your taxpayer dollars that we ask for grants for to get it
Mm.
to publish a paper as an open access paper. So they get even more money off of it. Like I
Mhm.
was like, okay. And then that way you can read it for free immediately. But not every lab has that kind of resource. It's like a substantial, I think to publish a paper, it is my salary for a month.
Mhm.
So like if you think about like how many papers are getting published, like my salary for a month for one paper.
Mhm.
That's wild, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or it's wild both ways. It's also like I don't make a lot in a month. Um Actually I think it's more than my salary, depending on the journal. Anyway,
Yeah.
there's some stuff coming on the chat
I think,
saying,
yeah, just people paywalls and stuff. Um,
yeah,
yeah, everyone is just like, this
oh
is
yeah, or open access
incredibly,
after 1
yes.
year.
Uh-huh.
You have crazy, yeah. Anyway, every
I
scientist
think,
knows this. Apparently, the public doesn't know this. I was describing this to one of my best friends, and then he was just like, "Wait, in like the book world, they give you an advance. Like they'll tell you, like, hey, like you wrote an amazing first book. Like we're gonna give you an advance. You write the second book. Like you get paid for like a whole year and for doing nothing. I mean, you have to, cough up a book in a year, but like you just get paid. And I was just like, ah, that's hilarious. We have to pay
yeah,
to publish it and to read it, like two ways.
yeah,
Um,
journals acting like EA games. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, I guess.
it's a whole thing.
Mhm.
Um, Sorry.
And I do think this is a really interesting topic because it's like I think, like, to me the interesting part is I think that if, especially when you're looking at these funding cuts, when like one of the main thing that's happening is they're saying that, like, we, for example, they're limiting the amount of overhead that you can have on grants, and this is being billed as kind of like reducing efficiency, and I think, or reducing inefficiency, sorry. But I think the interesting thing that, like, when you're looking at what these people are doing, they're not actually asking the people who worked there,
Like
like,
what's
what is
inefficient?
inefficient? Where is the waste? Like, if you want to get rid of the waste, you should talk to the people who have been in the system a long time and be like, what is inefficient here? What are we spending too much money on? Like, for example, I worked for NIH for a couple of years. NIH definitely wastes money on stuff, but it is not the stuff that Doge is talking about. Much of the stuff they waste money on is because they actually put too much effort into, like, trying to be accountable in spending, and therefore they have a lot of rules and it kind of wastes everyone's time, which is money. But it's like that's not the stuff they're getting rid of. They're, for some reason, not letting people go to conferences, which was not the problem. Like,
No, I feel like actually it's actually the contracts too. I
uh-huh.
guess I could talk about it now because I don't work there anymore. But like someone that's a contractor versus someone that's a federal worker, like the dollar amounts of your taxpayer dollars that go into their salaries slash a contracting company that you pay the contracting company, and that contracting company takes a portion of that and then pays their salary because they can't be officially government salaries, government employees. That's more. It's a lot more. You're paying this
Mhm.
random contracting company so that they're not official federal workers, which you could pay them like the set rate that's like a GS level. You have to pay them that GS level amount of money plus a massive overhead, sometimes twice their salary, to a rando contracting company. That is a waste of money.
Mhm.
Like if you like cut out the middleman, just hire the people right up and give them the healthcare benefits. Um,
Mhm.
just saying. Um, it's nice not to work there anymore and I can say
That's
things.
why that's why NIH has so many contractors.
Yeah, and that's why I was like, well, like literally every contractor, if you like reevaluated the contracts and just hired them for reals.
Yeah,
Just
exactly, yeah.
and you can ask
Oh,
literally any contractor and they'll be like, yeah, I get paid this amount of money. It's the same amount of money that you get paid, but they take a huge overhead and give it to this random private company.
Yeah. Also, just because Stutter Butter was asking about the stream schedule, actually our schedule so far has been 9:30 to 10:30, so I think we'll probably stick with that, and we are planning to come back next week too.
Yes.
Um,
We're
yeah.
gonna try and do it weekly, 1 hour, 9:30, 10:30.
Yep. And like, okay, just to like finish up this topic, I think like, I mean, to be very honest, I don't think that this is because like these are people who just don't understand how what words mean. Like I think that this like when you look at the pattern of it, it seems pretty obvious that what's going on here is that this efficiency talk is being used as a cover to kill things that they don't like researchers and universities. And like when you think about it, it's because you have a bunch of people who really lie like a lot. Like it's their favorite thing so to do. So like of course like who are they going after? They're going after journalists and scientists who are the people who have strong professional obligations to tell the truth. Um, like that's what's going on here. And like that is um like that this thing about like, oh, this is waste or inefficiency is like a sort of plausible seeming cover story, which when you really look at the economist like we've been talking about, when you look at the economics of it and you talk to people who do this sort of research, really it doesn't make any sense, but it sounds good like at first glance.
Yeah.
Like you have to look at the pattern, right? Like it's like, okay, they are going after like legal professionals, journalists, and scientists, like these people who have this professional obligation to like call people out when they are saying things that are wrong.
Yeah. And this is why we are in the misinformation age.
Yeah.
I have no idea how we're gonna get out of this misinformation age. Like, I have no idea how to fight the bots that are gonna take these videos of us on the internet and like, you know, AI them to make us say random things that are not what we actually said. Which is why I think what we're doing right now is really important because like we're in a room, a virtual room where you can talk to us directly and you can get the information through our voices right now, and we're physically here on the other side.
Mhm.
For now. Um and that's why it's quite our like little drop in the bucket in on the scale in the other direction.
Yeah. And it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fun and it helps with our morale. Like there's not all the things to be like, oh my gosh, it's really depressing. It's really scary to be a scientist right now. Like there's zero job security. We have no idea we're gonna be in a year. And like they're firing people left and right. Like labs are shutting down. Everyone in labs are being shut down. And when we're like, oh my gosh, that's depressing. That's depressing. And it's really easy to get down and like get into like a learned helplessness state where we're just like, ah, I give up, like no more. And doing some things help. And for us, it's standing up for science, going to marches, and talking about it. And like conversing to the interwebs and non-scientists and also other scientist friends about what things could be changed and what it looks like, and we'll try and be as real as we can with you guys without losing our jobs
Being
and getting
disappeared.
yeah,
Yeah.
and being disappeared. We like we'd like to not be disappeared and we'd like to still do science, and
Yeah.
those are like our two like two like goals that were like the only reasons we would not tell you anything. But other than that, we're gonna be as truthful as we can with how
Yeah.
we feel and what's going on in our lives. Hope
Mhm.
that's cool with you guys. Please come back and chat with us in future.
Yeah.
Um, okay, we wanted to
This-
end on a positive note because this is like one of our, I guess, like self critiques from previous episodes is that we was like that's sad, that's really sad, that's really sad, and then we end up with like super depressing downer, and we're like, are people gonna come back next week after us talking about super negative things the entire time? So we wanted to end with a rapid fire of shit the government does and has done for you that's great, and how many less people are dying because of it, and encourage you guys to just look around at a lot of things that you take for granted and be like, hey, actually I really like that and I'd like that to stay, and vote accordingly next time. um Nate, do you want to like talk about a couple of them from the top, and then I'll go. Oh wait, actually we made a PowerPoint.
Actually, Yeah. Do we have
Yeah.
a? I don't have the PowerPoint. Do you have the
Oh, I
PowerPoint?
don't have
Yeah.
the PowerPoint. Hold on.
Let me.
Technical difficulties. We're back. Actually,
Yeah.
this is our first technical
I
difficulty,
guess
and it's almost the end of the stream.
while you're finding the PowerPoint, I guess like I think one thing that I think that is really cool that's going on right now is like we're actually there are some government funded projects that are really making a lot of strides towards fusion power. So actually just in the last couple of years, the National Ignition Facility here demonstrated the first fusion reaction where it produced more energy than they put into it. And then actually just like even more recently, there's a reactor in France where they were able to kind of keep a fusion reaction going for 22 minutes. It was kind of the longest running fusion reaction ever done. And basically it seems like this is all getting to a point where like this is becoming a viable source of energy, honestly, like a lot faster than I thought.
I'm so sorry. I think it
Did you?
ended up being a link. I think I'm trying to
Mhm.
find the link.
Revive you says, "Wow, I can't run 22 minutes." Um, well, you have that. So there's that link from the. Let me. There was that web page that we had that had the contributions on it,
Yeah.
right?
And then we have a
Yeah.
bunch of papers on estimating the economic and budgetary effects of research investments. Um, this is the Mertens paper. Here we
Yeah. No,
go.
it was up at the.
Is it at the top? Sorry.
No, it's called like Noble. Oh yeah, Noble Reach Foundation.
Ah, maybe we'll just drop in the link.
Noble. Yeah.
Noble drops Noble.
It's the 16 innovations funded by the federal government.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's just drop
Do you
our.
want to pull it up or?
No, can you pull it up? Because
Sure.
I have found a different list that was not the list that we made, but I can talk about some of the things that we listed out. Um,
So,
Just effect
mhm,
that we have been so successful at that people kind of forgot.
mhm,
I think some of the things that is actually vaccines. I know that's a touchy topic right now, but most of us in my generation has probably never seen anyone with polio or any of those, like those machines that like help people breathe. And that's just because of how successful polio vaccines have been in this country. Like we've virtually, for now, have pretty much eradicated it from the states. We also never hear about hookworm anymore. Like we can walk on grass without shoes and not worry about a parasite going through a hair follicle in our feet, like on like the hairy part top of our feet, and then like just going into your body. Like we don't talk about hookworm anymore. That's a thing that our parents' generation grew up with. So we can play in the grass and not wear shoes. It's chill.
mhm. Like it's not a thing that we even really think about. Like no one's like, oh, look out for hookworms.
Yeah, and
Uh,
there's like a lot of sometimes we get it wrong too, right? Scientists get it wrong, but it kind of worked for us in the long run. Like another example of this where it had both sides is like we kind of got rid of malaria using horrible chemicals that like killed a lot of birds and baby birds, but there is no malaria in this country for now.
mhm.
um like
Also, no birds. But
yeah.
I
um
thought we were gonna do positive.
Yeah, no, this is positive. This is positive. Like the reason the CDC isn't the location as it is because it's near a major research university. The major research university is Emory University, which I went to for undergrad. And I literally when I was there, I was like, talking to the tour guides and they're like, why did they pick this location to put this university? And they're like, oh no, they picked all sorts of locations for universities. It's just this university where when they sent their kids here, they didn't get malaria and they didn't die. And so this university stayed. And so they didn't get malaria because they were on a plateau and didn't have like huge masses of water everywhere. And I was just like, oh, okay, so just like the chance of like sending your kid to college meant they wouldn't die of malaria at that particular college, like let that college go on for longer.
Huh.
Like
So
that's
the
the thing.
university is like got like natural selected by malaria, is what I'm
Pretty much.
hearing.
Yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of humans got naturally selected by malaria. Like
Mm.
the plasmodium like they have like genuinely affected the genetics, like the genetic makeup of like Homo sapiens actually. Like
Mm.
there that is probably for another stream. But here's
Yeah.
you want to go through some of these cool
Sure.
topics.
Yeah. 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 So these are all things that were created with kind of government research funding. Um, and so starting in 1945, Doppler radar was that. I wonder if that was like a for tracking missiles originally or something. But 1945, Doppler radar, flu shots, MRIs, just microchips, so just any sort of integrated circuit, closed captioning, barcodes. The material used to make tires came from a NASA project to develop things to land on Mars. Um, Wind energy, genotyping, much of the technology used in smartphones, GPS, the internet, of course, was started as a US government project. The algorithms used by Google, self-driving cars really started off with this DARPA Grand Challenge. There were these autonomous cars had to race in 2004, and of course, Siri and the actually most of the coronavirus vaccines were created through the government's Operation Warp Speed program.
Yeah.
Um,
I was gonna say like my favorites are what are my favorites? The ones I learned growing up were like a lot of NASA in like NASA adjacent, like thermometers and
uh-huh.
like things to measure things that are like handheld and small. Computer like cameras, like phone cameras, like cameras that are small enough to like fit like in your the palm of your hand, like LEDs, things like dustbuster vacuum cleaners, headphones. Like these are all daily things that most of us have. You look around your house. Even like the mouse that we're using to like click on the computer you're sat at right now. Like those are like NASA adjacent inventions because they were like, we need this thing so we can go to space. And they like made the thing and they're like, hey, actually this thing is actually super useful for other reasons. Like someone manufacture it and then like it goes everywhere. And like a laptop, like a computer. Someone was like, hey, we want a computer that's portable um for the space. That's everyone has a laptop now. That's great.
Hmm.
Very cool, positive things. Hopefully you guys
And I
like.
think, I mean, like I was saying, like I think a lot of these things, like there's historical things, and I think there's also, I mean, I think that like even despite everything, like there are a lot of really cool things that are happening still, like in the U.S. and in other countries. I think like one of the ones that I'm really excited about is um, moon, like this new series of moon missions and also Mars missions. There's actually a project that's like a joint NASA Europe project that is going to try and bring back samples from Mars so we can study them in the lab. There's another mission that's going to go to Europa and try and figure out, bore down and see if it has an ocean under its ice, and if so, if there's anything living in the ocean.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, and also I wanted to say like we shouldn't sleep on the administrators that are sat there like not actively doing science but literally doing like safety things. So one of the examples Ribeye B brought up is the Milamide, which a administrator in the FDA, she was like, let's check before we let this go through into the masses of America. Like let's do a safety check. And lo and behold, it the litamide, which was really helpful for nausea and sleep, it was a sleep aid, caused like really like horrible deformities in children. Like the pregnant mothers that took these drugs had like there's a generation of children in the Western world like that grew up with like weird shaped limbs because of this drug. And it is not here in the United States of America because an FDA person was like, nah. She was like,
mhm.
I don't want this. Um oh, okay. the thalidomide scandal Wikipedia page is very sad. Oh, okay. Yeah, if you
Oh.
looked at it. Well, like there's the thalidomide, people who suffered from it, like they're still alive in 2025. Like they have like yearly meetings, or like not yearly meetings. They'll have like, Facebook events, and they'll hang out. Yeah. Did we end up in a positive space at the end of the stream?
I feel like we struggled with it a little bit, but like when we got to the thalidomide part, but like but like also Mars.
Yeah.
Yay.
Space travel, adventure, like
Fusion.
discoveries. Yeah, there's so many cool things. Also, feel free to drop us in the chat things that you want us to talk about in the future, or you can DM us on Blue Sky. We have now an account. We have recently migrated. We will still monitor our X accounts, but we'll slowly move over to Blue Sky. Yes, please keep space funding. We approve of basically basic science. We would like some stable basic science. That would be really nice. Yeah, with that, we are Philosophising.
Yeah.
My name is
It's
Ruby.
nice
That's Nate.
to see you all. Yeah, it's
Thanks
really
for
fun to
coming
be
back.
back. Yeah.
It is really fun to be back. We're excited to be back. See you guys next week.